Garlic sales are up. Wooden crosses are luxury. That can mean only one thing: vampire on the loose. Ever wonder where vampire came from? The grave, of course, but the history of the bloodsuckers must have begun somewhere, right? Arguably, it all began in 1897 with the publication of Bram Stoker's Dracula. However, Dracula was preceded by Sheridan Fanu's Carmilla from 1872 and John William Polidori's publication of The Vampire in 1819. So the vampires were not always the seductive night creatures stalking people in the streets of Victorian London. So, the legend didn't came from Bram Stoker's novel Dracula like so many people believe. Stoker was Dracula in London, but he never even visited Romania. If he had, he discovered that vampires have no foundation in that country's culture. The vampire legend actually came from the country on the other side of the Danube River, Serbia. There aren't many words of Serbian origin that have made onto international stage, and none have made quite the impact of the simple word vampire. You don't need to be fluent in Serbo-Croatian to guess what it means either. The word first came into international use in 18th century when Austrian officials noted a local tendency in Vojvodina, the northern part of Serbia, to exhume bodies and kill corpses all over again, with the locals referring to the cadavers as vampires. An Austrian surgeon from that time is credited with creating the world's first vampire craze. In 1732, he rode up into the Serbian countryside with a unit of soldiers to find proof of vampires. In his report, he say he witnessed the excavation of a suspected grave where the corpse was staked. He say he saw the creature scream and bled. It was in his report that the term vampire was first used. From then on, vampires would be part of Serbian culture. The most famous Serbian vampire is named Sava Sava, but the first Serbian vampire is actually a man named Peter Blagojevic. He is the man about whom all the Austro-Hungarian newspaper wrote and whose name is written in the city administration and historical sources. Peter Blagojevic was a vampire long before Sava Sava was born, and thus he entered the international chronicles as the first vampire in Serbia. Unlike Savanovic, there is more serious evidence from the literary ones. The Austrian press released a report in 1725 that Sirius speaks about the existence of vampires in Serbia. The report about Blagojevic was widely translated and started a vampire craze all over the world. Until 18th century, little was known about what happened to the body after death. During the epidemics and plagues, graves were often reopened to bury new dead, and not all bodies rot in the same way, so if the body looked odd, people thought it was a vampire and burned it. In addition to Blagojevic, Austrian sources from that time, around 1825, mention another Serb of the unusual name Arnold Paule. He was an outlaw and a missionary soldier for hire, according to Vienna sources, and he had a close encounter with a vampire in Greece, from where he brought the infection. He allegedly killed a vampire there, but after that he fell bad and soon died in a village near Svilajnac, after which the attack of the vampire started in that region. The most famous vampire is the mythical Sava Savanovic. Legend said that he lived during the 18th century and he was working in a watermill in the small village of Zarozje in western Serbia. The village exists today and it's home to around 700 inhabitants, one of them possibly being Sava Savanovic himself. Placed in the middle of mountains, Zarozje is only accessible after several hours of driving from the capital city Belgrade, most of the time on rocky mountain roads. In Zarozje, between the land and the sky, the amazing landscape shows nature in her full glory. But in the village, life works differently, and so does death, according to the legend of Sava Savanovic. There are not many information about him or what exactly happened, but after he died, dark web of mysterious deaths occurred in Zarozhye and all the fingers were pointed at him. Some said that he was responsible for those deaths and he was accused of being a vampire. At the time, many inhabitants of Zarozhye say they saw a silhouette walking around his watermill at night. As you probably guessed, people were seeing vampires everywhere. They connected vampire with some evil person, but one could also become a vampire if an animal passed across his or her grave. So, while you enjoy the latest blood-sucking movie and Hollywood make billions on vampire adaptation, keep in mind, vampires are based on real cultural tradition. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, make sure to subscribe and support our channel. And remember, in one corner of the world, vampires are real.